Hey everybody, what is going on? I am doing a live stream because it's been a while, and I thought I would take some time to answer any questions you may have about previous reviews or potentially upcoming reviews if you've got any suggestions or questions about any of that. To kick things off, I'll just go ahead and say that I do have a few, well, quite a bit of speakers I think you all will be interested in. One of them is the Vanatu, and I'm going to share the screen real fast. Let's see. One, get away from me. Go. One Encore Plus. So I don't know how new these are. I get the feeling that they're probably come out within like the last few months. And the manufacturer actually reached out to me and asked if I would be interested in reviewing them. And I said yes. They also sent these transparent Zero Plus bookshelf or little desktop monitor speakers. The thing about these, or the thing that I thought was pretty cool from the manufacturer, is that they said, well, I asked them, how do you expect people are listening to either of these speakers? So they actually emailed me back and said, for the smaller ones, the One Plus, or I'm sorry, the Zero Plus, that they're going to be typically near field on desktop use. And for the One Plus, they're going to be typically desktop, near field, or midfield for a smaller room. And they have multiple settings. And in some of those settings, you can actually turn off the compressor or the limiter in them, which I thought was kind of neat. And they got just a ton of options that you can set up. So that's one particular set of speakers, or two, I should say, that I'm going to be reviewing soon. And then I've got, just to kind of blitz through it real fast, I've got a couple Arundel subwoofers, the 1961 subwoofers. I think it's like the V and the VS. And I'll be honest with you, I don't recall the exact model numbers, but they asked if I would be interested in testing those because they saw that I was testing a lot of other subwoofers recently. And I said, sure, send them my way. RSL has already sent, well, I've already got those Arundel subwoofers. And then RSL also reached out and asked if I would be interested in testing their 12-inch subwoofer. And they just released, see if I can find it real fast for you all. White color. And I want to see if they've got it on their website. Yeah, they do. Let me share it with you. So yeah, this new white color. I haven't even taken it out of the box yet, but my hope is that I will take all of those subwoofers out of the box this week, start kind of running them through their paces, breaking them in properly, listening to them in different setups, and then I will have a good weather day, maybe next week during Thanksgiving week or the following week, where I can take them outside and measure them when it's not too cold, because we're about to hit a cold front here pretty soon. So with those out of the way, I will answer some of these questions. And I'm just going to be honest with you guys. The super chats are automatically kicked up to the top. And if you do a super chat, that's a way that it will be easier for me to see your question. I will still try to answer as many as I can, but I'm probably going to try to cut out of here around 9 p.m., which is about an hour from now. And I don't think my voice could really handle that much talking going on for too long after that. So Nicholas said, GR Research. What about GR Research, Nicholas? Are you asking if I'll be testing any of their speakers? And if so, I'm not opposed to it. The problem is that I would need, like everything else I review, I would need somebody to either send me a used pair, but that pair needs to be in good condition. Danny from GR Research would have to be willing to loan me a pair to review, or I would have to buy a pair. And I have actually considered buying a pair of GR Research speakers and then maybe selling them at a semi loss on my Patreon group. And while I'm at it, I'll just pull up a list. I said a list. I'm getting that because there's a VIP list right here of what they sell, and kind of give you an idea of what I go through when I look at things that I want to review. Now, of course, Danny sells DIY loudspeaker kits. Woo, Danny, look at that here, boy. And you know what? While I'm at it, let me say something real fast. I've never met Danny. Hadn't talked to him. I don't think maybe I talked to him a long, long time ago when I reviewed a Rhythmic 12-inch subwoofer, and I think I had a question or two about that subwoofer. So maybe I talked to Danny at that point in time, but I don't think I did. But Danny reached out to me last year after I posted my divorce video, and he just had some nice words of encouragement. And then he followed up a couple months later, and then he followed up again. And you know, I thought that was really cool. I just thought that was really cool. He doesn't know me from Adam, and he took the time to reach out to me and just offer some words of encouragement. So I really wanted to give Danny a proper thank you for that. It's nice when as small a community as we are, we're still pretty spread out, and it's nice when people are thoughtful enough to send those kind of well wishes. So I kind of just wanted to say that while I was thinking about it. So Danny's got some different kits, and the thing for me is that for me to do a kit review, I would have to have time to do it, and I'm so busy with other speakers. I just don't really have the desire to build a speaker and then test it. If I had more free time, I would be willing to do that. So then, of course, I go to completed speakers, and I've got to think, all right, what's reasonable for me to afford? Because I think most of you guys understand that my videos, if I'm lucky, they make, well, not if I'm lucky, I'd say on average, they make about $50. If it's a really good video and it gets a lot of views out of the gate, then it might make 100. I think one of my best videos over its entire lifetime is probably that center channel video. And I got curious and checked, and I think that in the last 2 or 2.5 years, I want to say it was like $600 is how much it's made over its entire lifetime. So you guys can kind of do the math. I mean, if you have one video a year that makes that much and the rest of them are making 50, you have to have a lot of videos to get to the point where you can buy speakers, especially ones that are more expensive. With that said, what I was looking at was something along the lines of maybe these X Bravo pair or the XLS Encores. Now, ideally, I would be interested in testing maybe like the NX Studio. Danny also has these old school Brute speakers that look really cool and quite interesting. And I know a lot of you would ask me specifically about testing GR Research speakers. And that's why I have it, because it's just really cost prohibitive. If I bought one of these speakers, number one, and this isn't me saying anything bad about Danny at all. Let's be real here. If I reviewed the speaker and it just wasn't up to par, then it's going to be harder for me to sell that speaker, and I'm going to take a pretty significant loss. And I'm just not at the point in this channel where I can take a $600 loss. I mean, I'm spending a lot of money as it is. So for me to do that, for me to test a GR Research speaker, either Danny or one of you guys would have to send me one of his speakers. And I don't even think that I've reached out to Danny to ask him thus far, and maybe I can, but I haven't done that personally yet. I try not to get stuff from the manufacturer if I don't have to. Now, I guess I maybe do that for the appearance of things, but I feel like I've kind of gotten in a good place with the channel, and I've established myself enough to know, or for people to know that, I'm pretty honest, at least as far as my subjective stuff goes. And then the data speaks for itself. So sometimes maybe my subjective doesn't align with the data, or vice versa. I guess it's not a vice versa, it's a either or thing, right? So you just have the data. You can go look at the data and see what you think. But if I get a speaker from a manufacturer, sometimes I still worry, somebody going to say that I like the speaker just because the manufacturer sent it to me. And it's a bit of a slippery slope, right? But unfortunately, that is how I have to get speakers to review in many cases, because I just can't afford, $1,200, $2,000, $3,000, $10,000, $20,000 speakers myself to review and then sell later and take a 50% cut or 70% or 20% cut or some cut like that. And I hope that you all understand where I'm coming from. So thank you, Nicholas, for the super chat. I do appreciate that. And I hope that kind of answers some of your question. Douglas, I see you in here. Any plan to review floor standers? Actually, yes. And I don't know if you're part of my Patreon group, but I've posted some stuff about this in the Patreon group. Haven't made it public, and I won't say it outside of this until I actually start testing them again. But I do have the Z-axis extension from Clipple now. And I got that because I wanted to test not subwoofers, floor standers. And the way I used to test floor standers was I would lay them on their side on the clipple, and it worked. It just took a really long time to measure a wider radius and an overall larger diameter. And then there were some, it's not complications, it's things that you can do, but it's a little bit tougher to measure them when they're laying on their side. And then I'll always have to take them outside to measure them ground plane just to make sure that what I'm getting makes sense because it's unorthodox to measure such a large speaker on its side. So with the Z axis extension, then I can measure taller speakers. Now I'm still going to be limited by ceiling height, which is about 9 to 10 feet or so. But for most tower speakers, that's still good enough. That's still adequate. One speaker in particular that I've been trying for over a year to get my hands on are the Kef LS60 wireless speakers. I've asked Kef numerous times, and they're just basically, I think they've gotten to the point where they've sent all of their test and review units out to everybody, and they just don't have any more to send out. They probably sent them out to everybody initially, and then they got them back, and somebody from Kef took them home with them, or maybe they gave them to a dealer or something. But the impression, or at least maybe I think I've even been told this, is that they don't have review samples of that speaker for me to review. So then it's back to the same thing with the GR. Either I've got to find somebody with them or I've got to buy them. I have considered buying them because they're on sale right now for about $2,000 if off MSRP in hopes that I would like them. But that's a huge gamble if for whatever reason they're not for me. So if anybody out there is interested in seeing those speakers and has a pair, or if Kef is watching and you think, hey, we'll throw you a bone, we'll send you a pair to review, please get in contact with me. That would be appreciated. So, uh, Young Fem, there is no perfect speaker, but there's a perfect speaker for your preference plus situation. That's where data comes in and helps a ton. Yeah, I mean, I would agree with most of that. You know, it really is no perfect speaker. I say that all the time because I'm trying to get people to understand that everything is a compromise in the loudspeaker world, and hopefully the data gives you enough of an impression of what the speaker is capable of doing that it'll make the purchase decision a little bit easier for you rather than you buying and trying a whole bunch of stuff and losing a lot of money and a lot of time in the process. You can narrow things down to maybe three, four, or five if you need to do that many, and then try to figure out a way to get them in your room or go find a dealer that has some. And you can listen to them and make your choice down from that. How good are you with REW? Well, great if you do a guy with mini DSP. I mean, I've been using REW for a long time, and if I say I'm good with REW, then that sounds kind of pompous, right? But the truth is that I've been using REW for a long, long time. I was actually talking with some friends about this recently. That when I started measurements, it was about 2008 or so. I started with a program called True RTA, which I don't even know if that is still available. Let's see. True RTA. Yes, it is. Yeah, True RTA. So I used to use this a lot, and then I started using Smart Live around 2009 or so. I kind of got decent with that, but then I looked into REW, and REW. Honestly, I was overwhelmed the first few times I used it, so I punted it and I went back to True RTA. But then maybe like a year or two later, I went back to REW, and I've been using it since. So maybe since around like 2010, pretty regularly. And if you guys don't know, if you use Room EQ Wizard a good bit, I'm gonna pull up their website so you can see what I'm talking about here. I don't think that I realized that you could actually donate right here. Look, donations to the gentleman who builds this. So I donated it maybe a year ago or 2 years ago, and I would encourage anybody who uses this program at least regularly, man, just send the guy $5 or $10. You have no idea how much that helps, certainly financially, but just to receive an email that somebody donated $5 because they want to support my work, that's a huge deal. Like that gives me, I don't want to be like it's what wakes me up in the morning and keeps me going. Like, but it's really cool because it's like, okay, people I don't even know that somewhere off in the world, they value what I do as a person and they're willing to kick over some lunch money or something. So if you use REW, go to Room EQ Wizard, go to the donation section, hit the donate button, and kick him a few bucks. You know, that's I think that is the least you could do because he doesn't charge anything for that. And the complexity, I couldn't imagine. As a lowly little analyst who makes his own little MATLAB scripts, I couldn't imagine the effort that goes into building a program like that with the constant updates and all just the doodads and whatnot that's inside of it. I mean, it's just wicked cool. So if you can donate, donate to them. I'm going to roll through here and see if I see any super chats. Hey, $5 from Rob E. Hey, I appreciate it, man. When am I doing big subs again? So I quit doing big subs when I moved into the rental house that I'm in right now. And I quit doing subs in general because I thought I'm going to drive my neighbors insane. But I figured out a way to test subwoofers to where that doesn't happen. And it involves some, some logistics. I'll just put it that way. And the problem with big subwoofers, number one, is the logistics, right? That's certainly a factor, is loading it up into my car, taking it somewhere, taking it back out of the car, testing it, loading it back up, and then bringing it back home. That's a pain combined with 1A or 1B. My back, you know, I messed up my back over the summer and I'm just trying to play it smart. So these subwoofers that I'm testing now, the 12-inch, I really don't plan to go any heavier than that. I've got a dolly that I move them around on because I'm not about to try to pick those things up. So me testing large subwoofers like 15-inch plus or monolith THX subwoofers that are super heavy, I don't know that I'll be doing that for quite a while. You know, my dream one day is to be able to buy a bunch of land and move out to the country, build a big old barn dominium, have a huge workshop, you know, like a 40 by 40 foot workshop with 14 or 16-foot ceilings. That's my dream. And then I can just keep doing this, but at a really high rate. And I can test really large tower speakers effectively and then get like a gantry. You know, I've had people reach out to me and ask if I would be willing to review, and I don't think they would mind. PS Audio actually reached out and asked if I would be interested or able to test their FR30 speaker, and I had to decline because it's just too heavy. There's just no way. I mean, number one, at the time I didn't have the space, but number two, I want to say it's like maybe on the order of 400 pounds in total. I may be wrong here. So before I do that, let me pull it up on their website and we can just take a look together. Okay, total weight is 230 pounds. And this is the speaker, the Aspen FR30. I mean, it's a big old speaker. It looks pretty dang awesome. $30,000 a pair. Just from my own curiosity standpoint, you have no idea how much it hurt to have to turn that down. But I had to turn it down because it's too heavy. There's no way. The JBL M2 and the JBL 4367, I tested those because they were around 130 pounds or so. Same thing with the Danley HS50, SH50, I believe was the model, around 120, 130 pounds as well. I was able to have somebody help me lift it up onto the clipper. 230-pound speaker, even though this breaks down into different sections. On top of being that expensive, I'm like, I would rather have a crane lift, a hoist, or a gantry type setup where I could put speakers on a platform, raise them up, move the thing over, set it back down, disconnect it, move the platform off, and then have the speaker standing there on top of the clipper, and it's good and it doesn't hurt me at all. I don't have to do any lifting at all. That's what I would really, really like to get to one of these days. So that's my Aaron's Audio Corner dream. Now you guys know. Let's see here. Oh, SC Audio, $20 super chat. Thank you, dude. I appreciate that. 20 bones toward the GR fund. Come on, guys, pony up, man. I appreciate that. You know, it'd be awesome if it could happen. And Elon Osborne. I don't know if you guys watch his channel. So while I'm at it, dude, I'm gonna pull him up. I got this idea from him, and I like to give credit is due. Elon Osborne. Go if you're into like home audio, home theater type stuff. Go check out his page. Watch some of his videos. He just did a review of the Nakamichi Dragon, and I watched it. Man, the production quality is killer on that. So the dude is definitely doing his thing. I saw where he had posted on his community page something about doing a fundraising thing, like a GoFundMe, in order to cover the cost of. I think it might have been the Sony speakers the eight, I don't even know now, but the multiple little spatial mapping thing, surround sound thing that Sony has. The idea was that if he could fundraise the cost, buy them because he can't get them from the manufacturer, and then he would give them away to somebody who helped with the fundraising. I thought about doing something like that for some of these speakers. I just don't know. Like when you get into the GoFundMe area, stuff like that, I don't know how to operate that. And I really worry about this whole integrity thing. And I don't mean to make it sound like more than it is, but I just see like weird stuff come out about these things not going the way you wanted them to, and somebody being upset, and they make accusations, and I'm just like, I don't know if I want to get into that kind of stuff. So, but it's an idea. If you're watching this and you have any thoughts, let me know. But anyway, SC Audio, man, I appreciate it, and I will see you in the chat. $5 super chat from D Lloyd. Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Can you please talk about passive radiators? To my knowledge, they are superior in every way to traditional ports. Is there a downside versus ports? I'll be honest with you. I haven't built a speaker in years and years. My therefore limited, and keep in mind what I'm about to tell you is opinion backed up with some knowledge of what I've tested. And I'm sure one of the guys in this group, Brian Steele, if he's watching, he could definitely correct me. I would trust his opinion on this more than my own. But having said that, I view them kind of the same. And the thing that I like about passive radiators is that I think that they're a little bit easier to tune. I guess if you get a regular port, as long as you can remove it pretty easily, then you can tune that pretty easily as well. But I like the passive radiators where you can increase the weight via magnets or little bolts or whatever. And you can, really fine tune the alignment of the enclosure. Standard ports, you can have resonances with those. You can also have leakage from an enclosure out of the port. I mean, so the enclosure will radiate, but you can also have leakage from the enclosure resonance. So a height mode or a width mode or a depth mode radiate and actually leak out of the enclosure. And I see that in a lot of my data when you look at those globe plots. And if I can go pull up one of these globe plots, I will show you what I mean. Bear with me for a second here. I'll grab this one. Okay. Open a new tab. All right. So this horizontal globe plot. Now, this is the horizontal, and all I'm doing is taking the horizontal response of each of the axes, and then I'm just mapping it onto a globe like you're looking down. It's the bird's eye view. Now, let's say there's a resonance, and in this data, there's a resonance in this red. This red right here indicates that there's higher energy at the back of the speaker, because this right here, 0 degrees, is the front of the speaker. 180 degrees is the back of the speaker. This higher energy, that indicates that there is some kind of resonance. Now, is that from the port itself? Is that from the walls of the enclosure leaking out, like a standing mode leaking out through the port? Without doing some further investigation, I don't know. Normally, you can kind of get a feel for it just by calculating the dimensions of the enclosure and saying, all right, well, that's about roughly to this wavelength. And then, you can kind of make it make sense that way. But just on the surface, I'm going to say that this, if I follow it around, is around, let's say, 1 kilohertz or so. So there's some sort of resonance around 1 kilohertz at the back of the enclosure. And ported enclosures with a standard vent, I think that I see this kind of thing happen more often, either from the port itself again, or from some sort of resonance leakage through the port. I don't know that I see this in passive radiators. And that would be, if I had time, I would actually kind of go back and look through it. And so I say that to say that I think passive radiators may do better in that regard, in that sole regard. However, passive radiators also have their own resonances, and I've seen that show up in different speakers as well. Now, was that resonance from the cone of the passive radiator, or was that also some sort of enclosure vibration? That would be a case-by-case basis. So the polar that I just showed you indicates to me that it's kind of a combination of, it's probably maybe not the walls of the enclosure radiating or resonating, but maybe the port itself needs a better redesign. The reason I say that is because if you track this angle around, that resonance doesn't go all the way around. It loses some energy back here. Now, this could also be because it's the corner, so it's more well braced. That it could very well be that as well. And that's where like the analysis, you really dig into the analysis. And if I had the means, I even mentioned this to somebody on LinkedIn the other day that I would love to get one of those laser scanners. And there's a company, I can't remember the name of them now, who make it. And you could basically just get a 3D scan of the enclosure. I say a 3D scan, like a laser scan of the enclosure, and you can see where there's resonance. And the Clipple makes a laser scanner that you can do it with drivers with, but I don't think that they have anything for an enclosure. So you'd have to figure out something else with that, or go buy with this other company's thing. So anyway, I hope that that kind of helps and makes some sense, and somebody else can correct me if I'm wrong. How's the Morel car audio project going? It's going well. The car is done. I got it back from the installer. I've tuned on it a little bit. My buddy Scott tuned on it some, and it sounds pretty awesome. I do plan to make a video about it. I just don't know when, and I'm waiting for it to be both a nice day outside, because I can't do it in my garage. There's no light in there, so it needs to be daylight, and the car needs to be clean. Normally, I've just got a bunch of stuff in there. So, but yeah, it's going quite well. Gerald, what's up, buddy? I caught your podcast with Clifton, and I very much enjoyed it, man. I hope everything's going all right with you. Nicholas Ruminos, GR Fund Me, LOL. Dude, I appreciate it. The $15 super chat. That's awesome, dude. I appreciate that for real. Thank you very much. Roll through here real fast. I see a lot of questions, but I want to hit these super chats first. $10 super chat from the DIY High Five. Thank you very much, man. Got to hear the FR30s a few months back. They were great, imaged very well, or imaged really well. Yeah, so I wonder why they imaged well. And that's a video. God, I got so many ideas. I wish I'm up to 40 something different ideas for videos that I don't know how I'm ever going to get to making them, because it's topics like this where I think honestly, sometimes it would be better if I just hit the live button and just started talking and just said, here's everything that I think, and maybe don't supply proof for why, but I'm like, I don't know if that's right. Leaping into this particular topic about imaging. So in my experience, imaging is tied to two things. Number one, the matching between the left-right pair. And you also have to keep in mind that that's anechoic matching. But then when you put it into a room, if you have an asymmetrical room, which many people do, I see a lot of pictures where somebody will have wide open space on maybe the left side of their speaker, and then the right side, there's the wall 2 feet away. It's going to be very hard to get very focused imaging because of all the reflections from the right speaker compared to so few reflections on the left speaker, which means that what you hear from the left speaker is mostly the direct sound. There's less and less reflected sound from that left speaker if it's got a huge wide open space out to the side of it. That right speaker, you're going to hear direct, but you're also going to hear a whole lot of reflected because it's so close to the side wall next to it, which then means that the sound, if you were to measure in the seated position, the left speaker and the right speaker are not going to measure the same. They're going to measure quite a bit different, and it's probably going to be up into the very high frequency where that tweeter would be beaming, that the two sides are reasonably matched. And then that means that your imaging is going to be off, because you can imagine that if you have a particular sound and it's a mono sound and you've got two speakers recreating that sound, and one of them, let's just say that you're listening to them and everything is perfect. Everything's symmetrical. The speakers are perfectly identical in response. The room is perfectly symmetrical. Everything that you hear is going to sound just like that sound in mono. Now, what happens if you go in and you put a wall next to one speaker? Well, it's going to skew that response. So that perfect little tight focus of sound that you had before is not going to be tight and focused anymore. It's probably going to shift. It's probably going to wander. It may sound a little bit bigger at certain frequencies and a little bit tighter at other frequencies. And that's what I mean when I talk about frequency response matching between sides. It's not just the drive units or the speakers themselves being perfectly matched. It's also the room that they're in. And that's why you do need equalization. I mean, unfortunately, I know a lot of audiophiles are really against equalization, but if you really want that super tight focused centered image and then the soundstage and the focus of items in the soundstage from left to right, that's what you need. You need matched speakers, symmetrical sound arriving at the seated position. And then the other thing too is that in my experience, this is purely anecdotal, that wider radiating speakers with a broader radiation pattern tend to sound a little bit more diffuse in room than speakers with a more narrow radiating pattern. But also keep in mind that that is heavily impacted by the room, by the placement of the speakers in the room. And that also gets back then to what I was talking about in that prior example where, you put a wall next to a speaker and you got another one wide open. Um, there's going to be more reflections imparted upon the one speaker that's closer to a wall. So all this stuff, I do all these reviews and I talk about all this stuff, but it really is incredibly hard to capture every single example, every single detail. And so the data is supposed to kind of point you in the right direction, but my hope is that with enough data, with enough experience, you understand, oh, okay, maybe this is what this speaker measures perfectly, but in my room, they just don't do that well, or I don't like them for some reason. And then maybe you can help use the data to help you figure that out. Um, let's see here. Oh, $10 toward the crane. Harbor Freight has them cheap. Thank you, Robbie. I appreciate that, man. Actually, yeah, I did look at Harbor Freight. I was looking at their overhead, like is it a gantry lift? I get them confused now. But the other one that I noticed is, and I saw this from my friend over at Danley. He's their near field scanner guy. Let me see if I can find him real fast. Danley near field scanner. I can't find him, and I don't want to go on his Facebook page to show y'all, and I really don't want to mention him by name just yet. But he's got this it's like a triangle type thing on the sides, and it's got the center beam that runs between it, and another triangle on the other side, and it's just got the little lift, right? And I saw that, I was like, that's what I need. So I don't know what the proper name for that is. It's a standard hoist, or if that's a gantry or whatnot. But that was the other idea that I had. So thank you, Rob. I appreciate that, man. I definitely will get some use out of that if I'm able to go that route soon. Bruce Barnes, $28 super chat, man. Thank you. I appreciate that. Doing a cheap same speaker setup, Lots Klipsch RC52 centers, cheap AF. Would 7 vertical RC52 be better than RB25 bookshelves? I know vertical centers are better, but do they act like monitors and are better than bookshelves? Okay, let's see here. Let's see what the RC52 RC52. I mean, I would probably say yes, but the one thing that you have to keep in mind is that, I don't know. I mean, maybe not. Let's see what the other one is. RB25. Klipsch. RB25. RB25. Yeah. Okay. So here's the deal with taking a center channel speaker or an MTM design, laying it on its side. We know that that's not a good idea. I've got a whole video about why center channel speakers suck, and that's why, because the majority of them are MTM design, and there's a really narrow sweet spot. And if you have, especially when you have a smaller room, if you have a huge wide open space on the sides where there's less reflections off the side wall, or you're doing some heavy absorption, then that will help take away of the lobing effect. But the problem is that usually with most MTMs, you're lucky if you're getting between maybe plus or minus 20 degrees of a good, stable, even sound. Because once you start moving away off axis, maybe plus 20 degrees, plus 25 degrees or more, then you start sitting in this hole in the response. So the answer to that is stand them up. But what's the downside? There's always a compromise, right? So what happens when you stand up a center channel or an MTM? So go MTM. The same thing that you have with the horizontal, where you've got a sweet spot right on axis, usually with a tweeter within about plus or minus 20 degrees. And that's a generic angle, and it's going to depend on the speaker, but that's a generic angle. That same issue occurs when you flip it. Now it's plus or minus 20 degrees of the tweeter line vertically, but luckily we're not moving up and down. And if we have multiple row seating, then if you can position them right where the height is kind of a good compromise for each listener, then that's okay. And if you have multiple seats to the side, which is usually going to be the situation for like a standard home theater, living room type setup, then when they're placed vertically, it's not an issue because most people are around the same height, unless you've got a kid, but that kid probably isn't going to care if they're maybe 10 degrees below the primary listening height. So to answer your question, my personal recommendation, and others may disagree, but my personal recommendation would be go with those RC52s because you're also going to gain, in theory at least, a little bit more dynamic range because you've got that extra woofer. Now, I wouldn't say to use that extra woofer to allow you to cross over lower than you would a bookshelf speaker. I would say use that extra woofer, cross over at the same frequency you would have before. If both speakers have an F3 of 80 hertz, well, it doesn't do you any good to buy the speaker that has two woofers and to cross it at 70 hertz. It's still the same F3. It's still rolling off roughly the same. It's just you have a little bit more sensitivity and you have a little bit more dynamic range capability. And that's where the other Pro comes in. So to recap, vertical NTM, the Pro, extra sensitivity, extra dynamic range, again, in theory. And then the Pro also is more varied horizontal seating. The con would be you got a tighter window vertically, but usually that's not a problem for most home theater people. So I hope that helps. What's up, Billy? Just want to give Billy a shout out. Billy sent me this disc or this set of 80s discs. 7 of them, I think. Look at this ridiculousness. So I'm going to have to make a copy of these onto my hard drive. Show it. I'm going to hold it there for a second so you can see. Sweet dreams are made of these. I don't like to sing too much on my live streams because I often sound so much like the original artists that I don't want to get copyright hit. So, if you're wondering, Aaron, why did you stop? Why did you stop singing? That's why I don't want the stream to get taken down for copyright reasons. And God, I hope you know that I'm just kidding. Brian DeMeo, Aaron, love your videos. I've been wondering if you'll measure some of the Dynaudio studio monitors like the Core 59 or the Lid LYD 48. Seems you really enjoyed their home audio stuff. I have. And I actually sent the guys from Dynaudio an email last night and this morning saying, I'm ready to send these back. Matter of fact, I was just boxing them or just about to box them up before I started the stream and said, if you're willing to send me anything else, please let me know. I don't know that they will be, but if they are, the LYD 48 is one that I was going to see if they would be willing to loan me. I did ask about some of their other more expensive speakers, but they basically, and I can't blame them, they basically said, it doesn't really seem like your audience is the kind of audience that is spending, $20,000 or $10,000 on bookshelf speakers. Now, I disagree because I have reviewed some speakers that are 10, 20, 15, $25,000. And I think you all appreciate it. So maybe they'll change their minds, but we'll see. We'll just see what they say back. Hopefully that they'll be willing to send me some more stuff and the LYD 48s will be some of those as well. The is it the Contour 20i? Those are the ones that I really wanted to try to get a hold on. Contour 20i. Just think these are some beautiful looking speakers. And maybe I don't know, maybe you can disagree with me, but fine, accept all. Who cares? What are you doing, man? I don't necessarily care for gloss, especially when they have the other option of this. I just think that's gorgeous. Again, you can disagree with me. That's fine. I think those are gorgeous speakers. So I really am hopeful that maybe they'll be willing to send me some of those to review because so far I've liked every Dynaudio speaker that I've ever listened to and reviewed. I mean, this goes far beyond when I started reviewing speakers. I don't know that there's been a Dynaudio speaker that I didn't like. Some of them have some issues and I pointed those out, but overall, I really like them. They seem to do really, really well with distortion and dynamic range. And that's one of my favorite things about those speakers because It's like I made a home theater versus home stereo video a couple years back. And the main takeaway from the difference between home theater versus stereo is that with stereo, the idea is that you're probably not going to be using equalization. So, what you want is a speaker that has good performance on its own without needing equalization. With home theater, you're probably going to use equalization. So what you want then is you want output capability. So SPL and higher dynamic range. And then the things in the frequency response that you don't necessarily care for, you can go in and you can tailor down or you can fix a little bit, smooth things out. You know, as long as it's got good even dispersion, you can do that. So with the Dyne speaker that I just reviewed, there was that one particular area between 6 and 800 hertz where there's a strong resonance, and they actually got back to me and they said that it was indeed the cone edge surround resonance. That was what the issue was. It wasn't the basket. Like I was thinking, maybe it was the basket. It seemed too low in frequency to be cone edge surround, but I was wrong, and they corrected me on that. But I could equalize that a little bit and make it better, you know, and that was with a mini DSP 2x4 HD. The one thing that you can't make happen with equalization is you can't improve dynamic range and you can't really fix bass extension without affecting dynamic range and distortion. So if those two things are already there, dynamic range and extension, but there are some issues in the frequency response, I would rather have that with equalization and just fix those few little things in response that I don't necessarily care for, and then have a really powerful speaker. That's my preference. Let's see here. Um, oh my God, Joe and Tell, $10 super chat. Thank you, Joe. I appreciate that. Sponsored by Mika. I found out, or is it Micah? I've been getting people ask me, you need to review the RB42s. Like, no, man, I don't think I want to anymore. But I appreciate that, Joe. Mm. Oh, Bruce Barnes, that's not the right center. I'm sorry about that, man. But you answered anyway, so I appreciate it. Okay. So I think then my answer still stands. I apologize for not having the right center. Maybe you can address it down below and I can try to update that. Oh, wiki. Okay. So I think I've kind of made it through the super chats, and I'll see. I'm gonna start back from the top and see if there was anything that I might have missed. Um, see, Daniel Nielsen. I realize this is a question that touches on sound mixes and processor mapping. Some scenes might put specific sounds at 100 for you. Just want to hear Aaron's thoughts on this. Okay. Oh, and here's your question. At 2 o'clock in Sweden. Wow. Well, hopefully you were able to watch this back later. I ask whether going from 5.1 to 7.1 or more in practice shares the rear load between more speakers so we can buy smaller ones. I'm probably not I don't know if I'm the best person to ask that question because I don't have a multi-channel setup anymore. And when I did, it was all separate amplifiers. Everything was ran off their own amplifier. Oh, except for the sides. I take that back. The sides were ran off the AVR because they were higher sensitivity and they didn't need a separate amplifier to push them. I think I'm trying to see if I quite understand your question, shares the rear load between more speakers so we can buy smaller ones. So you're saying basically you're just kind of divvying it up, right? You know, saying I need like 5 super speakers, I need 3 super speakers and 4 not so super speakers. With that in mind, it comes down to the actual load of the speaker and the output that you're trying to achieve, which is affected by the sensitivity. So there's a lot of what ifs built into that statement. I would say that on the surface, it probably makes sense that you could get away with doing something like that. But there are smaller speakers that are harder to drive. That may be instead of an 8 ohm nominal load or a 6 ohm nominal load, they may be a 4 ohm nominal load, and they really they go down to 3 ohm. So it really is a what if. And I would like to answer your question with with better accuracy, I guess. But unfortunately, there's just too many caveats to that kind of thing. And you have to kind of look at it at a specific case by case basis. I remember reading your comment why you prefer the Kef reference 1 meta over March Suantuva, but unable to find that comment now. Can you please say it out loud again? Cheers. The meta 1. I think the March audio was just too narrow for me and its uh, horizontal radiation. And I don't remember exactly what it was, but if I had to guess off the top, I'd say it's like plus or minus 30. And I think the meta, yeah, reference meta one was maybe like plus or minus 50. I mean, it's a decent bit wider. So for that reason, I would take the reference meta one. I believe both of them have very good frequency response and the sensitivity is around the same. Output capability is really good on both of those as well. But the wider radiation, if you watch me enough, you probably know that I like plus or minus 60 as my kind of ideal, throughout the entire bandpass from 20, well, maybe not 20, but upper mid range through the tweeter area. I would prefer to stay consistently at about plus or minus 60. 50 is tolerable, but going below 50 for me, is there's just not as much room involvement. And for those maybe who don't quite know what I'm talking about, let me just give you a real example here. And I'll use the Dynaudio Emit that I just reviewed somewhat recently. So let's see here. Open a new tab. Okay. When I talk about the radiation pattern, you can use this to normalize. So what this does is it takes all the responses off axis and it normalizes them to the on axis response. So it's saying, all right, if I take on axis and I subtract the off axis, what's the delta? And usually what happens is the higher in frequency you go, the more the response falls off axis. And so the delta begins to grow and grow and grow. And so the speaker may not maintain its directivity at higher frequencies. And we see that here above 10 kilohertz with this particular speaker, you go from about plus or minus 40 degrees in radiation to about plus or minus 20 degrees, right? So that's what happens at the higher end. But through the mid range and the tweeter area, what we kind of expect is it to be for most bookshelf speakers with a dome speaker, it's going to be about plus or minus 50 to 60. Could be a little bit more, could be a little bit less, but on average, that's where it is. Most speakers with a waveguided tweeter is going to be 30 to 50. Again, there's going to be caveats to that, but that's kind of the general trends that I see in the data. So when I talk about the radiation width, the Dynaudio to me was pretty wide. It wasn't quite as wide as I hoped for. So if I look at this -6, I'm looking at this lighter red line, and it's about plus or minus 50 to 60 degrees. So on average, it's pretty wide. I would have liked for it to maintain that higher in frequency, but it's okay that it didn't because it seems to me like it did a better job at that than other speakers do that have a waveguide. Even though the waveguide in the Dynaudio Emit 20 isn't a waveguide in the traditional sense, it's not horn loaded. It's not sitting deep in the throat. It is still somewhat waveguided because waves are basically directed to create a certain pattern. But that's why I liked the Kef reference one meta. So let me go find into I'll just compare them real fast if I can find the data. Open a new tab. Okay. Reference one meta. Okay. Terrible picture. Alrighty. So this is the March. This is the Kef. Now you can see that with the March, you are pretty wide through the mid-range, upper mid-range area to about 3 kilohertz, and then you start to narrow. Now with the Kef, you're not quite as wide as the March in that mid-range, upper mid-range, but you're about 10 degrees off of that. But the thing that doesn't happen is it doesn't narrow. It doesn't shoot down, right? Like the March, it's narrowing, narrowing, narrowing. And with the Kef, it maintains its width and radiation at about plus or minus, let's see, 60 degrees out here, plus or minus 50, all the way up to roughly 20K. Okay. But with the March, when you get to maybe like 4, 5, 6 kilohertz in this ballpark, that's when it drops down below plus or minus 50. And by the time at 10 kilohertz, you're about plus or minus 30. And you're roughly about the same, maybe 20, 25 degrees at 20 kilohertz. That's the difference for me. That's why I like the Reference One Meta personally more than the March Audio. Now, the March Audio speaker is fantastic. What I'm talking about comes down to personal preference, and you don't know these things unless you A, listen to the speakers, and B, have the data. Hopefully, I've got enough data for you to go out and find a speaker to kind of make some sense out of it, or maybe you've listened to some speakers and you can reference back to the data. But without those two things, you're just doing this. You're just filling around in the dark, and then you're hoping for the best possible outcome, and you're spending a lot of money, but it's going to be harder to get to where you want to be. And there kind of is maybe that misconception that just because I provide data means I don't listen to speakers. I'll always listen to speakers. I've got to listen to them if I'm going to. I mean, I can't listen with a microphone, right? I can't do that. I want to enjoy them. I want to listen to them in the room. So I'll always listen first, and then I measure, and then I go back and maybe listen again if things look kind of funky with the measurements and I don't understand, why my notes don't line up, or maybe I want to run equalization through a speaker to see if a certain problem exists at a certain frequency, just those kind of things. But I always listen because that's where the joy is. I enjoy doing measurements too, but I got to listen to them. It'd be weird if I didn't. Okay. Hey, thanks for the view on the Monoprice THX8. I ordered one using your link, and it's awesome for my apartment. My neighbors, my neighbors love it. That's awesome, dude. I just don't show your neighbors any of my videos, then, please. Okay. Um, let's go down here. So I'm getting close to 9. So probably in a little bit I'm going to cut off because I got some stuff I need to do, like finish packing up these speakers and get them ready to ship tomorrow. What do you think about the waterfall? So here's a question: what do I think about the Waterfall Audio Evo Hurricane? I'm not familiar with that at all, actually. So, have you ever used? Okay, have you ever used bass shakers for your home theater? No, I haven't. Um, so here's my thing about bass shakers. I've experienced them from in the car audio world. What you're trying to do is you're trying to get the bass up front. Most of the time, you have a subwoofer behind you in the trunk. And what happens when you're even slightly out of phase? I'm talking like, 5-10 degrees out of phase. The image, the subwoofer won't stay locked in up front. You probably know that if you've listened to a car audio system, especially one with a subwoofer, that it feels like it's vibrating your seat. Well, if it's vibrating your seat, more than likely, it's not tuned correctly. Because what you should be doing is you should have the bass like it's planted up front. And it's fully in phase. When it's vibrating your seat, and I mean, this is like one of the areas that I feel like I'm probably an authority in, and I'll get a big head about it. If it's vibrating your seat, then something is out of phase. It may be at 50 hertz, 40 hertz, 60 hertz, 70 hertz, 80 hertz, 150 hertz. Who knows? Something's out of phase. The problem is getting all of those frequencies perfectly in phase because the wavelength of subwoofers, I mean, I don't even know off the top of my head what 80 hertz is, but let's see, 13,580. Nope. 14 feet. So a full 80 hertz wavelength is 14 feet long. Now imagine you're trying to dial in 80 hertz. That's your crossover point. And it's 14 feet long. And then 60 hertz is 18 feet long. So you got, well, almost 5 feet actually. You've got almost 5 feet difference between, and that's roughly, what is that? Let's just say 1.7 meters. I can't do that math in my head, but I'm going to do the math in my head because I know some of you are going to say, I need meters. So 5 feet, 2 meters. I love Google. 1.5 meters. You got that much distance in 20 hertz difference. And so you're trying to lock in 80 hertz on your dash. You're trying to say, let's say you're in a room. Let's say you're in your house. You're trying to get 80 hertz to lock in. And then here comes 60 hertz going, nope. You thought you had bass right, but you did not. And now your butt's vibrating because something's out of phase or some sort of weird cancellation. So all that to say that bass shakers to me are kind of the opposite direction of what I want to go. I don't want my seat vibrating. I mean, maybe at 20 or 10 hertz, okay. But if I'm talking, let's say 50 to 100 hertz, I do not want anything vibrating because then that's a distraction to me mentally. It takes me out of whatever I'm doing. Now, home theater, it may be okay, especially when the idea is that you want the rumble in your butt, and you can quote me on that. You want the rumble in your butt. I'm gonna put that on a t-shirt. For stereo, no way, dude. Because if I feel any vibration, I immediately go from feeling like, all right, I'm listening to this music to, all right, now this something is a distraction. And it's the same kind of thing that if you have your home theater set up, you've got a door rattling, drive you nuts. Or if you're in your car and you're driving and you've got some kind of headliner rattling, it'll drive you insane. when you go down this rabbit hole far enough, rattles and resonances and vibrations will drive you nuts. And they are by far my worst enemy when I try to dial in a system. So that's why I'm not fond of bass shaker speakers, because to me personally, it's a distraction. And I don't want any home theater guys coming at me, but I may disagree with you on the seat shaking. Your butt will move given enough SPL. I mean, for sure. I mean, your whole body will move given enough SPL. But I think that with realistic output, I'm not building SPL vans, so I'm talking maybe 120, 130 hertz. Uh, I not hertz, decibels. I'm hitting probably 130 in my Tesla right now, and my seat's not a distraction. I mean, it probably it does vibrate a little bit, but it's not a big distraction. And I can tell you that from personal experience too, that many systems that I've tuned, you can actually, if you've got an all pass filter or you've got some kind of variable phase, not time, but variable phase rotation, then you can actually move the sound from out of phase where it's like making your butt rattle to in phase where the sound is right in front of you. It's on the dash, or in a home theater situation, it's at where the center channel is. Getting that though is extremely hard, and I would really like to make a video on that. But that's one of those things where you kind of have to be there. You really need to be there to feel it and to understand, because I can talk about phase and I can talk about angles and stuff all day, but unless you've really sat down with it and you've experienced it firsthand, and you've been able to put, pen to paper, so to speak, you've used DSP and you've tweaked things and you said, "Oh, now I see what he's talking about." As you change the crossover slope from 18 decibel slope to a 24 decibel slope. I mean, you can be in phase perfectly at 24 decibels, go to 18, and now something's wrong. Maybe you're out by 90 degrees or 40 degrees or 70 degrees or some weird angle. And maybe at one frequency you're perfectly in phase still, but maybe at another frequency you're not. That's the challenge with bass. And I don't know how I'm going to do it, but one day I really would like to be able to do some kind of like a seminar, or like I mean, I don't know. I have to think about it, but that's something I really would like to do. Vivid has some GR speakers ready for Aaron to review. What? Who? Where? Oh, Vivid Theater. What's the process to ship speakers for you to test? Shoot me an email. You can write this down real fast. It's hardisj@gmail.com. Shoot me an email and just let me know, and we'll go from there. If you can help cover one way, that would be cool. But if you can't, then I'll cover shipping both ways. And I mean, depending on the size of speakers, hopefully I'll at least break even on that. And with some of the donations here today, that should help too. So yeah, get in contact with me that way. Shoot me an email, and we'll see what we can do, man. That'd be awesome. Yeah, I'm sorry. This was a question that somebody else was answering. It's right at 9 o'clock for me. I'm going to try to flip through a couple of these. Hope you test the Bacart A10. I will. Mads has reached out to me. I've talked to him, and I think it's just a matter of them getting enough in stock to send me one. So at some point I will, and I do look forward to it as well, because I like their stuff. And with the Purify speakers, I'm really interested to see um, what they're like. Let's see here. Okay. All right, guys. It is 9 o'clock. Unfortunately, I am going to have to head out for the night, because I need to get some other stuff done and then probably call it a night soon. But I do appreciate you all staying and watching. And, I would like to do this maybe like once every 2 weeks. So if you're cool with that, maybe just drop me a note in the comment section below and just say, yeah, I dig it. I would say like one a week, but I think realistically, I don't know if I could keep that schedule. It's hard enough for me to keep a schedule with putting videos out. I wanted to do them every Monday, and I'm not sticking to that. Sometimes I'll do like this one recently. I dropped on Sunday, and then I may drop another one Thursday, or I may not. It just kind of depends. Stuff is always in flux with me, but I do appreciate it all. Later, Aaron. And then Nicholas, 14.99 super chat again. Aaron kicks butt. Thank you, dude. Butt kickers and kicks butt. I'm sure that's what you were going for, but dude, I appreciate that. That really does help a lot, and that maybe will help cover will help cover a portion of the shipping of the GR speakers. It sounds like, if that's what Vivid Home Theater is going to send me. So, all right, y'all. I will talk to you all later, and hope you have a good one. Take care. Peace.